Okay, morning folks. We're just going to make a start on the next lesson about hurricanes, okay? So you've got your headings here, okay? Hurricane impacts is what we're looking at, and we've got today's date, so make sure you get that nice and neatly underlined. Next bit we're going to look at is our keywords, okay? So storm surge, hurricane preparedness, and hurricane response. We looked at this briefly when we did weather and climate. Okay, so a storm surge is a very dangerous big wave of water which is pushed ahead of a hurricane or a tropical storm, and it crashes onto the land and causes widespread flooding. Alright, the preparedness, this is how prepared a country is for a hurricane. It varies depending on the wealth of the country. We'll look at this towards the end of the lesson. And then a hurricane response, this is how a country responds after a hurricane has happened. So the preparedness comes before a hurricane, okay? Sometimes we add in prediction to this as well. We try and predict what a hurricane is going to do, but it's not easy to do that. And then our hurricane response is what happens after. Okay, so again, this can have a couple of layers. So we can have the short-term and long-term responses. Okay, or sometimes called immediate and long-term response. Now, hurricane warning systems. So little subheading. Okay, warning systems. Countries affected by hurricanes often have a warning system in place to describe how serious the hurricane is at any stage or any point. So again, we should be familiar with this kind of stuff, all right? Because obviously we get hurricanes and tropical storms in the Bahamas. So all we're going to do is you can make a little table. You can color it if you want, all right? It's better if you do color it. And we got green, yellow, orange, red, and I want this column as well. Don't worry too much about this here. But green does no hazard, no danger expected. Okay, we're going to look at the hazards in a couple of minutes. Yellow, hazard is possible. Okay, so a hazard is just something dangerous. We defined that word in a couple of lessons ago. All right, be aware of the potential impacts. Orange, we're more certain that there's a risk to personal and property safety. And red, if you can see it, it says significant risk to lives exist and significant damage and disruption. Okay, so essentially as you go from green to red, the likelihood increases and the level of threat increases. So there's two things. It's more and more likely it's going to happen, and if it does, it's going to get worse and worse. Okay, so again, just these two bits of the table will do. All right, then threats of a hurricane. So the hazards. So what are, as we go down here, hazard is possible, more certain about it, it's definitely going to happen. So what are these hazards? What are the threats? What are the main things hurricanes bring to a place? Okay, and it's essentially these three things. Okay, so there's high winds. We need to make a note of this little subheading and write this down. All right, there's a lot of writing today. High winds causing damage. So a tropical storm officially becomes a hurricane once it reaches winds are faster than this. Alright, so the high winds come and they can cause all sorts of damage. Okay, blowing stuff over, blowing roofs off houses, knocking people down, picking items up and throwing them through windows and all sorts of stuff. Okay, flooding is another obvious one. Alright, so waves of water are pushed in front of a storm onto land and cause widespread flooding. You also have high levels of rainfall. So when you combine this, if you have an area that's beside the sea, where hurricanes usually hit because they form over the oceans, you've got the ocean flooding and you've also got rainfall. All right, so it's like a double impact. So high rainfall also adds to this, especially in areas of flat land such as the Bahamian Islands. So we have very flat land. Okay, so what happens is we get a lot of flooding, and flooding causes huge amounts of damage and death. Water is incredibly powerful, especially when you mix the high winds blowing these waves onto the land. Alright, so when you combine these two things, it gets very, very serious. Alright, and flooding, like I said, it absolutely destroys things. Homes, buildings, cars, everything. Okay. Landslides. Land can become saturated. Saturated means when something is full of water, and steep land can experience large landslides. Now, a landslide is when the ground actually fills up with water and slips away, it collapses on itself. Not so common here, okay, because we don't really have very steep areas of land. But in other parts of the world, okay, especially in parts of Asia, they experience these huge landslides which can bury whole road systems or homes and villages completely. All right, so make a note of those three. Then moving on, Okay, so they're the threats. These are the dangers that come with a hurricane. This is the impacts. This is what it can affect. Okay, so again, there's some very important words in here. Okay, so again, another little subheading and notes to be made. So the primary effects of a tropical storm are the immediate impacts of strong winds, heavy rain, and storm surges. So we just saw these are the dangers: the winds, the rainfall, the storm surges. The effects are what happens because of these. So these include people being injured or killed, okay, by stuff being blown around, drowning, buildings destroyed or damaged. So the dangers are the high winds, strong winds, heavy rainfall, and storm surges. The impacts are what they do, okay, so they can kill people, drowning, buildings destroyed, damaged, cars destroyed, all that kind of stuff. The secondary impacts then are the impacts following the storm and following the primary impacts. So these include people being left homeless. So a primary effect or impact would be buildings being destroyed. So your home gets destroyed. The secondary effect then is people are left homeless because the buildings are gone. Okay. Another secondary effect, a lack of clean water and sanitation, hygiene. All right. Diseases spread around because you've got all this dirty water flooded in, you've got burst pipes and all sorts of stuff. Okay, sewage is backing up because of flooding and mixing with the drinking water, all that kind of stuff. So primary come first, then the secondary impacts or secondary effects follow that. All right, so you need to make a note of that as well. Okay, so we're going to take a little break for a minute. Okay, what we're going to do is just show you a little video. Now, I'm not going to show you in this one here because you're going to need to watch it yourself to really see the effects. So the following video shows the effects of a typhoon. As noted in the previous lesson, typhoons are the same as hurricanes, but just that's what they're called in Asia. Okay, so a typhoon and a hurricane are exactly the same thing, but a typhoon occurs in Asia, whereas hurricanes occur over here. There's a video link here. Okay, so you can either type the whole link into Google, or you can type the following into YouTube. This is the name of the video: Monster Storm Mangkhut Battered Hong Kong, World's Strongest Storm 2018. It's 6 minutes and 27 seconds long. Okay, so if you type that into YouTube, you should find the correct video, and then check that it's the right length. 6.5 minutes long. All right, so what that does, that shows a range of different things happening, all right, in Hong Kong, which again is over in Asia. While you watch it, I want to make a little table like this: weather, primary impact, secondary impact. Okay, and then while you're watching, you can fill in the weather and the primary impact. So again, this is kind of up to you. There's no real right or wrong answer. It should be fairly straightforward. I've given you an example. So for example, I watched a bit of it. I saw extremely high winds. What was the primary impact? It was blowing items around at high speed. So it's throwing things around at high speed. There could be another one. You could write down high winds again. What was it doing? Blowing over trees. Okay, perhaps. What else? What else was going on? Was there heavy rainfall? Was there strong ocean? Was there strong waves hitting? And so on. So you can use one. You can use them more than once. You should be able to get about 5. Okay, I've only shown 4 rows here. You should be able to get 5 different types of weather situations going on. And then what was the primary impact to people, to vegetation, and to buildings or cars or whatever. Okay, so the following video shows the primary effects and the weather at the time. Note these down the table above. So again, put in the different types of weather. If you want to use high winds 3 times or once, that's grand. Okay, after watching the video, can you make a list of what you think the secondary effects were? So what would a secondary effect of this be then? All right, I might put down huge damage caused to buildings by things being blown through windows. Okay, so that would be the secondary impact. You could have strong sea or strong waves causing flooding, destroying buildings, people left homeless and stuff like that. Okay, so you just the secondary impact, you'll have to think a bit, but do these 2 whilst you watch the video. All right, so you should get about 4 or 5 of those. Okay, and like I said, use this to find the video up here. All right, I'm just going to stop there and we'll continue in the second video. Let me see if this is open up here. No. Okay.